Hello everyone. I think that now that SMO round 2 is over, it's a good time for me to come and answer and share my response to some of your requests, which is, how do I prepare for the SMO? Now, of course, when we talk about preparing, this video is going to focus more on the short answer. And for the next part, I will talk more about the Olympiad type. In most countries, when they say Olympiad, it actually means more like round 2. For us, we call the SMO round 1 and round 2. But for most countries, when they say contest, they mean short answer. And when they say Olympiad, they mean proving. So this is normally the nomenclature that you will see. There are, of course, when it comes to the SMO, which is the main audience that we have, limited numbers of past year papers that are suitable, because some years are too hard, some years are too easy, and furthermore, even if the questions you have not finished them, you don't really have an entire paper to try, simply because people like me and your teachers and your friends have shown you various questions already, such that every time you look at 25 questions, you have seen 7 of them before, and it kind of ruins the fun, and it also prevents us from having an accurate gauge of where we are. Now, we know that when it comes to the SMO, there is SMO Junior, then there is Senior, and then there is Open. And if you're talking about round 1, it is more accurate to actually sort of say that this is how it is. Senior and Open are a lot closer to each other. Junior is pretty far away. But if we were to talk about it in terms of the landscape of competitions, there is still sort of like a whole bunch of easier contests. Now, when I say easier contests, I just simply mean that the questions are easier. It doesn't mean that it's easier to get first place, because if the contest is easier, maybe you need full marks to get first place. Whereas if, let's say, that the contest is hard, maybe 50% can give you a very good result. So when I say easier, I just mean easier questions. And there is a lot of space between the easier contest and even the SMO Junior. And I'm talking about round 1. This does create a bit of an issue, right? Which is that it is very difficult for us to find suitable practice. And I would just want to set out some initial principles first before showing the rest of the document. You can see that this is a Word doc and there are pages that I've prepared, but I just want to say a few things first. Now, number 1 is that practice according to your ability, not your age or grade. When I first started to learn competitive programming, which was in undergrad, because I didn't do any coding as a student, I can't say that I am going to do the hardest question of the NOI immediately. By then, I was an Olympiad teacher, so I realized that it's no shame to teach myself to do competitive programming, starting from literally middle school contests in the US. Middle school contests in the US basically means 11 and 12-year-olds. It's okay. I just want to be able to do them very quickly, and obviously, as an undergrad, I moved past that stage very fast. But I wanted to just get the vibes of competitive programming first. So I started from there. Thankfully, I didn't get stuck too long on there. But this is the same for all of you. If you find that you are a JC student starting on Olympiad, but Open is impossible, try Senior. If Senior is impossible, try Junior. It's okay. When I say practice according to ability, it means that except for like just before the contest. I mean, if let's say that you are a JC student, you're preparing for the SMO Open, 1 month before that, you should focus on the SMO Open. You don't have a long pathway. But if you're watching this video in July, you are a JC1 student, and in JC2, you hope to take the SMO Open round 1 and do okay, but you have not much experience, you can start from junior. But make sure that when you are 1 month before that, or like if let's say you are starting with 1 year, 2 or 3 months before that, you make the switch. The second thing to say is that there is a mix of timed and untimed practice. There are times where you just sort of say that, you know what, I just want to do some questions, just to, let's say, for example, recover after I have had a whole period of exams and I feel like I've forgotten everything I know about Math Olympiad. Then I just want to go and take some questions and try them. You don't have to time yourself. Once in a while, however, you want to time yourself because some of you feel that I can solve all the SMO questions, but you're running short of time, and only when you actually sit there for 2.5 hours, you realize that I'm too slow, or my brain is too exhausted, or after 1 hour, I start to make more and more careless mistakes. Okay, so timed and untimed, please do both. The third thing to say is that when you are looking at the SMO, it is a very weird time control. It is considered quite a lot of time per question. 6 minutes per question is more than most short answer contests around the world. And that is to say that you will not be able to find a perfect match. So don't worry too much when you look at the other contests for finding something with a similar time frame. Because SMO Junior, you don't actually need 2.5 hours. Honestly speaking, most of you will realize that after 1.5 hours, you barely make any progress. What you could solve, you have already solved. What you cannot solve, you still cannot solve. So don't, so ignore the 6 minutes per question, especially for junior. Whenever I'm teaching my class, I will tell you 6 minutes per question to tell you, take your time. But in the end, no one really needs 6 minutes per question for those questions they can do. And the final thing is also that the SMO difficulty is usually more clustered. That is to say that when we talk about the difficulty of the SMO Senior, maybe the difficulty, if you put it on a number line, is like this. The difficulty of the SMO Open is like this. The SMO Junior, the difficulty is like this. In terms of the questions, I'm saying not just the year-to-year variance, but I mean the range of difficulties of questions is not that wide. There are a lot of contests where the range of difficulties is kind of like that, or even just like that. So don't look at question 1 and say it's too easy, or the last question and say it's too hard, and therefore say that it's useless. The SMO difficulty is a lot narrower. Like let's say SMO Senior asks you so much of circle geometry, trigonometry, logarithms, polynomials, binomial theorem, the typical Sec 3, Sec 4 topics, and that makes it very clustered together, whereas most competitions are just wider. This is all over the world. Okay, so with those being said, I want to sort of split it up into 3 main sections. The first section is the easier contest section. The second section is around junior, and the third section is around senior to open. I'm not splitting into junior, senior, and open. It's easier than junior, and senior to open, because for round 1, senior and open are not that far apart. Okay? So, there's a whole document prepared. You can find this in the description below, except for the annotations which I just made. These are only English language contests. If you are not from Singapore, or if you're familiar with, let's say, contests from China or from your home countries, feel free to use them as well. Also, most of these competitions we cannot take part in, so I'm just going to note that you can find these questions. Whether you can take part in them, honestly, some yes, some no, some I'm not even sure, because it changes from year to year. Okay, so first stage are what I would call the entry-level contests. These are the ones where mostly it is just about how fast you can do things. These are pretty good if you are new to Olympiads. For those of you in Singapore, the contests that you will hear from this category, a lot of them are organized by the SIMCC, which I have forgotten what it stands for. But this would include, let's say, your SASMO, your SIMOC, and a few others. These are good for getting competition experience, but generally they are not free, and also even the past questions are not cheap, and taking part is not that cheap. So they are good for getting experience, but they are not really the most important practice resource. And also, of course, in practical terms, if you're talking about how recognized are these contests, far less than the SMO. But if you want to get experience with sitting in there for, let's say, an hour and a half, not making careless mistakes, being able to think after a long school day or stuff like that, then there is no harm in that. Among the others, most of you would be able to take the AMC 8, the Kangaroo, and the Australian AMC from various centers, schools, or service providers. You can find these questions available for free. The AMC, the Australian one, and the Math Kangaroo for 10 years, the AMC 8, the American one, through all years. And if you look at the time frame, you can tell that they're all very short and mostly MCQ. AMC 8 is only up to grade 8 or Sec 2. For the others, they are split by sections. And so if, let's say, that you are a JC student, entry level for you may not make sense to be AMC 8 because you are no longer eligible to take part, and also it will not test you really enough things. It's just becoming like a mental arithmetic contest. So you can try the AMC, the Australian one, or the Kangaroo, the British one, if you are able to have access to that competition. Now, the next block is those that are in the vicinity of the SMO Junior. Now, the thing is that it's very hard to find such contests because the SMO Junior is very weird. What they define as easy and hard is different from literally every other country around the world. So there's basically no trig, there's no logarithms, there is no circle geom. There is also, let's say, no modular arithmetic beyond the trivial. And there will also be, let's say, some of these kinds of logic questions. So it's a little bit weird. It is quite hard to find something like this because it also does a lot more algebra than most other contests at this level around the world. So I've highlighted a few things you can try. One that is, again, the most well-known one that we can take part in is the AMC 10. The AMC 10 is no longer like just such a purely speed contest. It is at least going to have some tricky questions towards the back or the middle, depending on your experience level. The ones in front should be relatively easy. But take note also that the American contests in general, they have a very wide range of difficulties. So American contests, they tend to make sure that they want to give a morale booster at the front. The SMO doesn't bother to do that. Such that like the first 5 questions, let's say, anyone should be able to do it as long as they are not like completely zero experience in math. That's their intention. Of course, some of the contests, maybe it's the first 3 questions, some is the first 5 questions, some is the first 10 questions, depending on how long it is. Another thing is that American contests tend to have less algebra, more combinatorics than in Singapore. Combinatorics means your PNC, your probability, and just some of these kinds of algebraic manipulations you will see less in the AMC. There is a middle school contest by Berkeley, which is quite suitable for practice. Purple Comet, I think, is one that Hwa Chong used to take part in. I don't know if Hwa Chong still does, but it's also quite suitable. And then the EMIC is something that is actually for P5 and P6 students which are representing the country, it is not consistent whether Singapore takes part in this. I think right now, no, but I may have been mistaken. It is a suitable practice as well, because it is P5, P6, but national selection. It does include a little bit of algebra ideas, and for the non-algebra, it is in fact perhaps a bit harder than even some of the junior round 1 questions. So this is up to junior level. The rest, I have clustered them as contests in the senior to open range, and there is a lot. This is not everything, but this is a selection of them. I've highlighted some of the main features that we can see in each of these. The one that we can take is still only really the AMC and AIME. We can take the American contests, AIME subject to qualification from the AMC. But other than that, we can't do most of these, except for the IMC or International World Youth Math Intercity Competition or something like that. This is the Sec 1 to 3 version of the AMIC. In Singapore, those of you who are familiar with it, there is a selection test to qualify for this. This one, we do take part in it. And usually it ends up being the year 3 students who do qualify. So you can take it as it's like the top national ranked year 3 students. So it's definitely going to be suitable as a practice resource. However, this one only has answers and no full solutions. So take note. I have also highlighted some contests from various countries around the world. It is useful to try different countries' contests for 2 reasons. One is that the SMO likes to copy from different countries to make it a bit less obvious. And the second is that the question styles are different, and so you get exposed to different ideas. Right? So this includes the Canadian Open Math Challenge from Canada, of course. It is not that difficult because the questions have guiding parts for the harder ones, but that makes it useful for self-practice, right? So you can follow along the logic and get used to solving harder questions if you are not so experienced. I know that I have some viewers from India, so the IOQM, which I have honestly forgotten what the order is. Is it Indian Olympiad Qualifier for Math or something? I forgot exactly what it's called. This is sort of equivalent to our SMO Open in terms of the role it plays. The format's a bit different because there's 10 questions of 2 marks, 10 questions of 3 marks, 10 questions of 5 marks, totaling up to 100. So that means that, of course, the easier questions and harder questions, you can see the difference in difficulty more deliberately than the SMO. But this is also from India. Hong Kong has one that I like to use in my classes as well, which is 10 1-mark questions, 10 2-mark questions. It also is around the SMO Open kind of standard, but perhaps a bit fewer easy questions, hence 20 questions, 3 hours. The math prize for girls is another one that is quite interesting because it is $50K US for first place. Imagine that. But yeah, we can't take part, right? It's definitely restricted only to US citizens. I think PRs, I am not 100% sure, but not for Singaporeans, not for non-Americans. We can't get the money, but we can make use of the questions as well. Many of their questions are, I think, quite interesting because it uses just very numerical kind of tools. Something very useful for round 1 is to get used to how to calculate a bit faster, how to reduce the number of cases and things like that. Okay, now the final set that I want to mention is, in fact, as an appendix, there are lots of short answer contests that are harder than open round 1 significantly, and most of these are organized by US colleges. Not for college students, but for high school students. The most famous ones which I am aware of right now, I have mentioned. HMMT is sort of the biggest one, Harvard MIT's. Each of these has its own combination of different rounds. So some of them, in fact, most of them have an algebra round, a combinatorics round, a geometry round, or a number theory round. They may have all four, or they may combine two of these. Some of them have a calculus round. Some of them combine algebra and number theory. Some of them combine combinatorics and number theory into discrete math. They also have various other types which are quite interesting and you can try. But they are above the SMO Open round 1 level on average, meaning that if you plug one or two questions, they could sit in the SMO Open. But as a whole, they are harder and pretty fun. It also is useful if you are trying to prepare for round 2 and round 1 at the same time. You say that I don't like to do too many round 1 questions, they're boring, I've seen so many already. These ones are actually hard enough that sometimes they use theorems that you don't normally see in round 1. Let's say a Chinese remainder theorem for number theory. It can use, let's say, some moving points argument or projective geometry. Very unusual solutions can be found there. And one final one which I want to highlight is the Online Math Open. The Online Math Open, which was basically run until 2020, where unfortunately it stopped. This is a team contest that ran over 10 days, and the difficulty covers the entire range, from question 1 being a joke question usually, to question 30 being harder than the IMO Q3 and Q6. This, I think, is sort of like the thing that if you want to just try questions where definitely you will have some that you can solve and some that you cannot solve, that's where I would go to. So again, I've included this in the description below. If you have any questions about some of these contests or any other suggestions, please feel free to share them in the comments. I want this to be just somewhere where we can learn more about practice resources, and that includes for me. I'm sure that some of you are not from Singapore and you have other suggestions from your own countries. Feel free to share them and we can all benefit together. Okay, so thank you for watching, and you can look forward to part 2 sometime later, where I will talk about the proving / Olympiad based resources that also exist.